So this is something that we need to know about. The scholars, may Allah preserve those who live amongst us, and may Allah have mercy upon those who have passed away. Who are they? Who are the scholars? Everyone claims these days that this person is scholar and that person is scholar. So it's important for the ones upon Dawah Salafiyya, and the ones who are upon the way of Ahl al-Athar and Ahl al-Hadith, the ones who are in fact Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the ones who are in fact upon the Haqq, that they know who the scholars are. It has been mentioned that the one who has a right to be called an alim, these people are qalilun jiddan. They're very few. And we won't be exaggerating if we say that they're rare. Because the scholar has certain qualities that apply to him that most of those who connect themselves to knowledge today don't possess. فَلَيْسَ الْعَالِمُ, the scholar is not مَنْ كَانَ فَسِيحًا بَلِيغًا, who can speak well and who's articulate. Doesn't make him a scholar. Who fasih, who baligh, he can talk. That doesn't make him a scholar. The scholar also is not the one necessarily who writes a bunch of books, or someone who takes a manuscript that has dust up on it in one of the old books libraries and takes it out, blows off the dust, and then does tahqiq of it, corrects it. This doesn't make him a scholar. If we judge a scholar on these type of things, how many books he has, then we would be making the scholars a small group of people, or we would have been, actually we'll be entering everybody in the arena of scholars. And this is what minds of most people when they think of alim. If you were to ask someone, you step out, you say, is this, who's a scholar? Name to me 5 scholars. Name to me 6 scholars. And you will be astonished by the statements that you would get. We continue on by saying, in most people's mind, they are taken in. They are tricked. They are conned. Many of the Amma, the general people, to think that if somebody speaks classical Arabic, or he speaks well, he's articulate, or he can give a strong khutbah, then it makes him a scholar. Or that if he writes a book, then he makes him a scholar. And that therefore they have a position of astonishment with these people. But in reality, the scholar, al-alim haqqan, is the one who has taken in the knowledge. A large amount of knowledge of shari'i, legislative knowledge. And he knows the legislations, the rulings of kitab and sunnah. He knows to abrogate it, that which has been abrogated and that which abrogated those ayat and those ahadith. He knows the mutlaq, that which is general, and muqayyid, and that which is restricted. He knows that which is summarized and that which is in detail and that which explains it. And he knows knowledge, or have the aqawil of the salaf. He has in his heart the statements of the salaf and their differences. Another fact of the signs of the one who has the right to be called an alim is what Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu said. Laysa al-ilm, listen to this, knowledge is not an kathrat al-hadith, by relating a lot of narrations, but in al-ilm, verily knowledge is khashyat Allah, is having fear of Allah, is having fear of Allah. And Yahya ibn Akhtam said, it's obligatory upon every scholar to know that which is abrogated from Quran and that which abrogated it. Right? That which is mansukh, I should say, nasikh l-Quran wa mansukhahu. So that he will not make obligatory upon himself, O the servants of Allah, that which Allah did not make obligatory upon them. And Imam Ibn Abdul Barr has a chapter in his book which is called Jami Bayan al-Ilm al-Fatwa, which you mentioned, Bab chapter, who has the right to be called a faqih or alim, haqiqatan, in reality. In reality. and who has the right to give fatwa. Then he mentions some narrations. Amongst them is the narration of Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. Pay attention to this narration. It is enough of the fear of Allah, or the fear of Allah is enough of knowledge. In other words, it's enough to be knowledgeable of Allah that you fear Him. And كَفَى بِخَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ عِلْمًا. Enough that you fear Allah, that you have that the fear of Allah, that this ilm that you have led you to fear Allah. This shows that you in fact have knowledge. And enough that you are deluded in a sense of thinking that you have some position with Allah, or feeling safe from the plotting of Allah, to be jahl, to be ignorant. So enough of the knowledge regarding Allah that you fear Him. Enough or proof that you're in delusion and in a state of ignorance that you feel that you have some status with Allah, tabarak wa ta'ala, some position with Allah, tabarak wa ta'ala, or that He will not punish you for your sins. Al-iqtirar. Al-iqtirar. That's enough ignorance. And Allah tabarak wa ta'ala said, verily those who truly fear Allah are the ulama, the scholars. And Ibn Jurayj said on authority of Atha, he who knows Allah, he is the scholar. And Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah says, this matter of restricting the knowledge of Allah, or this ayah is restricting true knowledge of Allah to those who possess ilm. This ayah which we have taken in Surah Al-Fatiha, verse 28, it is restricting the true knowledge of Allah and fear of Allah to the scholars. They are the ones who truly fear Allah. And they are the ones who truly know Allah, the ulama. And Qatada said, he who doesn't know the differences, the differences in opinion among the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een, he hasn't breathed in, he hasn't inhaled the fragrance of fiqh. He hasn't inhaled fiqh, the fragrance of fiqh. Because he doesn't know what? The differences among Sahaba in this regard. وَقَالَ سَعِيدٌ مَا بِي عُرُوبَةٍ. He who does not know the ikhtilaf, the differences in the furu', the minor points of deen, or branches of deen that the Sahaba might have had, he is not to consider alim. He's not to consider a scholar. You're starting against a picture now of who can be called a scholar. I mean, from the very first statement, many people that you thought, just because they could speak, just because they made your emotions flow or whatever, you ruled them out because it's not just somebody for seeing. And just because they have a number of books, you ruled that out. And you're getting down to the point that it's not just a matter of talking. It's not just a matter of relaying information. But it's the fear of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And it's knowing and having knowledge of the Quran and what was revealed. Knowledge of the Sunnah. Knowledge of the statements of the companions. Imam Malik said, or was asked of him, Liman yajuz al-fatwa? Who is the permissible to give fatwa? He said, La yajuz al-fatwa. It's not permissible to make fatwa, to give juristic rulings, except the one who knows the differences of the scholars. And someone said, the difference of the people's opinion? He said, no, the differences amongst the companions of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. An-nasikh wal-mansukh. That which was in place, and then another verse or hadith came and abrogated it from the Quran or the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The one who knows that, kada yufti. He can give fatwa. He can give fatwa. Qala Ibn Uwais rahimahullah al-alim, the scholar, alladhi yu'ti kulli hadith, the one who gives for every hadith, haqqahu, is right. And Abdullah ibn Mubarak, that great imam, was asked, when is it permissible for a man to give fatwa? He said, إِذَا كَانَ عَالِمًا بِالْأَثَرِ, if he has knowledge of the narrations, بَصِيرٍ بِالرَّأْيِ, and upon clarity in his opinions, regarding the issue of opinions. So therefore the true alim is the one who is able to connect himself to these matters, and he's never satisfied with ilm. He never has enough of knowledge. Even if he doesn't speak that many words, and even if he doesn't have that many books. Even if he doesn't speak that many words, and even if he doesn't have that many books. قال Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, وَقَدْ تَلَيْنَا. Now Ibn Rajab rahimahullah has this great monumental work called فَضْلِ الْعِلْمِ السَّلَفِ عَلَى خَلَفِ, the virtue of the knowledge of the Salaf over the knowledge of those who came after them. And I hope that someone would translate it, inshallah. Perhaps our brother Abu Maryam, who seems to have a zeal for translation these days, would do so. Nevertheless, he has in one of the statements, we have been tested with ignorant people who believe that just because someone can speak well or in detail, mina mutaakhirin, from those who came later, that he's more knowledgeable than those who preceded. Some of them think that a person is more knowledgeable than anybody that preceded him, even the Sahaba, because he talks a lot and he speaks a lot, right? And therefore he has more knowledge than those fuqaha al-mashhureen, those fuqaha who are well known, who the people follow. What this means, he said, هذا يلزم, what this means is that those before him of the fuqaha, who has followers, who he believes he's knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than them, or they believe he's more knowledgeable because he speaks more, that therefore this means that he in fact was more knowledgeable than those who taught them. Because there's no doubt that they talked more than their teachers. And they talked more than their teachers. And it goes back like that. And he said, so therefore, then you would say that Tawri and Awza'i and Layth and Mubarak and that level, that he, from the Tabi'een and the Sahaba, that they're more knowledgeable. Those who came after them are no more knowledgeable than them. Why? Because aqalla kalaman, they speak less than them. And then that those who were before them came, from the Sahaba, Ibn Mas'ud, and those like that they were more knowledgeable than them. Because there were some amongst Sahaba who spoke less and who were more knowledgeable. Like the narrations of Abu Bakr Siddiq are fewer than the narrations of any other Sahaba. The narrations of Abdullah ibn Abbas may be more, and more his talking may be more. What his point is, and I hope it's clear, is that this is not a signal. This is not any type of manner. This is not any type of scale to judge knowledge on. This is an erroneous and a mistaken scale to judge knowledge based on the fact that someone talks more than others. How many narrations do you find from Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? Yet all the Sahaba say, and Abu Bakr was the most knowledgeable amongst us. And Abu Bakr was the most knowledgeable amongst us. So it is not a matter from that. Abdullah Mas'ud seen this illness coming, and he talked about it. He said, verily you are in a time in which you have a lot of ulama and you have very few speakers. But there will come a time where you will have only a few ulama and you will have many speakers. So those who their knowledge is a lot and his speech is little, then they are praiseworthy. And those who are opposite are blameworthy. Those who knowledge is a lot and their speech is little, mamduh, are praiseworthy. And those who are opposite are blameworthy. Think about this, brothers, and think about the last statement. He who has a lot of knowledge and his speech is little, then he who are al-mamduh, he's praiseworthy. And he who is in the opposite of this, he's madmum, blameworthy. This is the scale. This is the scale. But this scale is almost non-existent in the ranks of those who call themselves Salafis. Non-existence. I mean, let's not talk about those other than Salafis. But amongst the Salafis, this mizan, this scale, where is it at? Where is it at? We are in a time where the juhal, the ignorant, can talk about the great scholars. Like many have talked regarding Sheikh bin Baz and said very nasty things. And Sheikh Al-Albani and said very filthy things regarding him. And Sheikh Muqbil and Sheikh Rabi' Hafidhahullah. And that's all of this because they did not have the scale that we're talking about in the words of Ibn Rajab and the words of Ibn Mas'ud. They did not have the scale. They did not know how to judge the issue. For the scholars are not known by their statements and by talking a lot and by writing a lot. They're known by Qala Allah. Allah said. Qala Rasulu. The messenger said. Qala Sahaba. The companions said. This is what they're known. They're not known by kathrat kalam, a lot of talk, wal jidal, and arguing and debating in the matters of deen. But everything they do is restricted to kitab and sunnah. Everything they do is restricted to following Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was given jawami al-kalim, the ability to say a few concise words that carry a long range and extensive meaning. And the scholars are like that. The words of the Salaf are few and carry much barakah and much meaning. The words of the Khalaf and those who came after them are very much and carry nothing of real knowledge and no real blessing. So, since that the scholars are in fact inheritors of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those who inherit from the prophets, the person who inherits from a person is the one most closest to the person. The one most closest to the person is the one who inherits from that person. And the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. So they have this quality, the same quality of speaking concise and speaking summarized, few statements, but much meaning, much benefit, and much wisdom to it. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in Hadith Abi Hurairah, which is in Sahihain, verily I have been given the keys of speech. And in one narration he said, I have been preferred over the other prophets in 6 matters. Amongst them, I have been giving jawami al-kalim. Jawami mean qalil al-lafz, few words, kathir al-ma'ani, much meaning. Many meanings and much meaning. Full of meaning, full of benefit. The people benefit from the time the Prophet ﷺ was sent to Allah to inherit the earth and all that is upon it. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah says, Ibn Rajab rahimahullah says that we have this fitna. Listen to his point. Some people have been put to trial by those who came later, of the later day scholars, or the later day mutaakhireen, who were connected to knowledge, not necessarily scholars in the true sense of the word. Min kathra kalamuhu, because his words are a lot. Wa jidaluhu, and his arguing is a lot. And his debating is a lot in the matters of deen. So they think because this person talks a lot, debates a lot, argues a lot, is good in argumentation and debate, can talk a long time, that he's the most knowledgeable. وَهَذَا الْجَهْلِ الْمَحْض. That is total ignorance. Look to the akabir sahaba. Look to the elders of the companions. They're scholars like Abu Bakr and Umar and Ali and Mu'adh and Mas'ud wa Zayd and Thabit. How were they? They talked a little. They talked a little. فَلَيْسَ الْعَالَمْ بِكَثْرَةِ رِوَايَةٍ. The scholars not by relating a lot of narrations. وَلَا بِكَثْرَةِ الْمَقَالَ, by speaking a lot. وَلَكِنْهُ النُّورِ, but it's a light that Allah throws in the heart of an individual, that يَفْهَمْ بِهِ الْعَبْدِ. The servant understands how he can make a distinction between that which is batil, false, and that which is true, and how he can express that to others in a very short and concise and summarized manner. This is knowledge. We're talking about ilm.